A serjeant-at-arms. A serjeant-at-arms is an officer appointed by a deliberative body, usually a legislature, to keep order during its meetings. The word serjeant is derived from the Latin serviens, which means servant in origin. The serjeants-at-arms were indeed a body of armed men who waited on the person of the English monarch, and the ceremonial maces with which they are associated were in origin a type of weapon. Origins. The term sergeant can be given two main definitions, the first being a military rank and the other a governmental role. Whereas technically the two roles were not mutually exclusive, they were very different in roles and duties. The soldier sergeant was a man of what would now be thought of as the middle classes, fulfilling a slightly junior role to the knight in the medieval hierarchy. Sergeants could fight either as heavy to light cavalry, or as well-trained professional infantry, either spearmen or crossbowmen. Most notable medieval mercenaries fell into the sergeant class, such as Flemish crossbowmen and spearmen, who were seen as reliable quality troops. The sergeant class were deemed to be worth half of a knight in military value. The office originated in medieval England to serve the sovereign in a police role, much like a bailiff in more recent times. Indeed, the serjeants-at-arms constitute the oldest royal bodyguard in England, dating from the time of King Richard I as a formed body. The title Serjeant-at-Arms appears during the Crusades during the reign of King Philip II of France in 1192. The serjeant-at-arms was a personal attendant upon the king, especially charged with arresting those suspected of treason. Richard I had 24 with him on the Crusades. They were formed into a 20-strong corps of serjeants-at-arms by King Edward I in 1278, as a mounted close escort. In 1399 King Richard II limited the corps to 30 sergeants, and King Charles II had 16. The number was reduced to 8 in 1685, and since then it has gradually declined. The original responsibilities of the serjeant-at-arms included collecting loans and impressing men and ships, serving on local administration and in all sorts of ways interfering with local administration and justice. Around 1415, the British House of Commons received its first serjeant-at-arms. For that time onwards the sergeant has been a royal appointment, the sergeant being one of the sovereign serjeants-at-arms. The House of Lords has a similar officer. The formal role of a serjeant-at-arms in modern legislative bodies is to keep order during meetings, and, if necessary, forcibly remove any members who are overly rowdy or disruptive. A serjeant-at-arms may thus be a retired soldier, police officer, or other official with experience in security. The serjeant-at-arms of the House of Commons has general charge of certain administrative and custodial functions, as well as security within the chamber of the House. Specific countries. Australia. The Australian House of Representatives operates under the Westminster parliamentary system. The serjeant-at-arms is a career officer of the Department of the House of Representatives. The ceremonial duties are as the custodian of the mace, the symbol of the authority of the House and the Speaker, and as the messenger for formal messages from the House to the Senate. The sergeant has the authority to remove disorderly people by force if necessary. For the House of the Public press galleries on the instructions of the Speaker. The administrative duties of the sergeant include allocation of office accommodation, furniture and fittings for members' offices, coordination of car transport for members, mail and courier services for the House, security for the House and arrangements for school visits. Once a meeting has started in a house, the sergeant will usually stand at the door to keep authority and make sure no one else comes in or out. Bangladesh. The serjeant-at-arms is the senior official of the national parliament who is responsible for maintaining order during sessions and to maintain security and protocol at parliament under the guidance of Speaker. Presently, Commodore M. Ashraf-ul-Haq, a naval officer, is appointed as Serjeant-at-Arms. Canada. The Serjeant-at-Arms is the senior official of the Canadian House of Commons. In this role, the Serjeant-at-Arms is responsible for the building services and security of the House of Commons, and is appointed by the Governor-General acting on the advice of the Federal Cabinet. The Serjeant-at-Arms carries the mace, the symbol of the authority of the House, in the daily parade into the House of Commons chamber. Provincial legislative assemblies, houses of assembly, national assemblies, and provincial parliaments also employ serjeants-at-arms. Although the position has become mostly ceremonial, during the 2014 shootings at Parliament Hill, Ottawa, the then Serjeant-at-Arms of the House of Commons, Kevin M. Vickers, assisted RCMP officers in engaging the gunmen. Reports show that RCMP Constable Curtis Barrett, leading the tactical formation, shot and killed the gunmen who had gained access to the centre block of the Canadian Parliament buildings. René Jalbert, Serjeant-at-Arms of the National Assembly of Quebec, is also known for his role in ending Denis Lortie's killing spree in the Parliament building on 8 May 1984 by constituting himself hostage and negotiating with the shooter for 4 hours. New Zealand. The New Zealand House of Representatives operates under the Westminster parliamentary system. The current Serjeant-at-Arms is Steve Streefkirk. He is a permanent officer of the House, and has a team leader, chamber and AMP meetings support, which is also the Deputy Serjeant-at-Arms, who is responsible for 8 chamber and AMP meetings support officers. The Serjeant-at-Arms controls officials and members' staff coming to the House, and the surrounding areas such as the lobbies and the members' lounge. There is involvement at select committees where the chairman seeks assistance to maintain good order. The Serjeant-at-Arms sits in the debating chamber opposite the Speaker at the visitors' door for each House sitting session to ensure that security is effective, good order is maintained, administers the members' attendance register, and takes instructions from the Speaker RT Hon David Carter MP, or the other presiding officers, Deputy Speaker, 2 assistant speakers when they are presiding. The chamber and AMP meetings support officers control all access to the House, and attend to the needs of the MPs and officials when the House is undertaking its business. The gallery operation for visitors, strangers is controlled by the Parliamentary Service Security Service, but the Speaker and the Serjeant-at-Arms have the overall authority as defined in standing orders. The Clerk of the New Zealand House of Representatives is Mr. David Martin Wilson. The Clerk Assistant is Suze Jones. Past Serjeants-at-Arms in recent times have been Group Captain Manson, Wing Commander Bob McKay, Ms. IPI Cross, Ms. Carol Rankin, Mr. Donald Cameron, Mr. Fred Hutton and Mr. Brent Smith. South Africa. The Serjeant-at-Arms is a member of the parliamentary staff who acts as the official guardian of the mace, a decorated rod which is the symbol of the authority of the Parliament of South Africa. The mace must be in position in the National Assembly chamber during a plenary sitting. The Serjeant-at-Arms is also responsible for maintaining the attendance register of the members in the House. He must also maintain order in the House and remove people from the House as ordered by the Speaker. According to the National Assembly rules, the Serjeant-at-Arms shall remove, or cause to be removed, any stranger from any part of a chamber which has been set apart for members only, and also any stranger who, having been admitted into any other part of the chamber, misconducts himself or herself or does not withdraw when strangers are ordered ordered to withdraw. The Serjeant-at-Arms is attired in a black tailcoat, waistcoat, starched white shirt, bow tie, and white gloves. The current Serjeant-at-Arms is Regina M.H. Lomi, who succeeded Godfrey Kleinwerk. The Usher of the Black Rod is Vincent Shabalala, whose duty it is to escort the presiding officers of the National Council of Provinces into its chamber. Sri Lanka. The Parliament of Sri Lanka was established in the form of the Westminster parliamentary system. The Serjeant-at-Arms, second most important permanent officer in the Parliament, who heads his own department, the Department of the Serjeant-at-Arms. The Serjeant-at-Arms is appointed by the Secretary-General of Parliament and is responsible for all ceremonial occasions as the Master of Ceremonies in Parliament. Preservation of order, custody of the mace, security, admission of visitors, allocation of accommodation within the house and supervision of galleries. Responsible for security. By tradition he is the only officer authorized to carry a weapon inside the Parliament building and is assisted by the Parliament Police Division. Admission of visitors to the precincts of Parliament is controlled by the Serjeant-at-Arms. Ronnie Abasinghe was the longest-serving Serjeant-at-Arms in the history of Sri Lanka. He held the position from 1970 to 1996. The current Serjeant-at-Arms is Anil P. Samarasekara, United Kingdom Parliament. The Serjeant-at-Arms of the House of Commons is responsible for security matters concerning the House of Commons. The Sergeant, whilst in the Commons overseeing proceedings, can also escort MPs out of the chamber by order of the Speaker of the House. The post dates back to 1415, and has often been held by retired military or police figures. The current Serjeant-at-Arms is Kamal El-Haji. He was previously the head of front of house and VIP relations at the Ministry of Justice from 2010. The equivalent officer for the House of Lords is the Gentleman Usher of the Black Rod, that was formerly a separate Serjeant-at-Arms of the House of Lords, but the two appointments were merged in 1971. The royal household. In addition to the above-mentioned officers, there are other Serjeants-at-Arms who attend the sovereign on state occasions, a remnant of the body established by Richard I. Usually, members of the royal household who serve as Serjeants-at-Arms have had the office bestowed on them as a mark of distinction for long and meritorious service. Insignia. The mace serves as a symbol of royal and parliamentary authority. 10 maces are kept in the Dual House at the Tower of London in addition to those kept by the House of Commons, the House of Lords and the Lord Chancellor, as well as carrying the maces on state occasions. Each Serjeant-at-Arms wears a collar of S's as a symbol of his or her office. United States. The two houses of the United States Congress maintain the position of Serjeant-at-Arms. The sergeants are charged with the maintenance of order on the floor of the chamber. They serve with the architect of the Capitol on the commission that oversees the United States Capitol Police and security for the Congress, and they serve a variety of other functional and ceremonial roles. Other bodies, from state and local legislative houses to civic and social organizations, have created posts of Serjeants-at-Arms, primarily to enforce order at the direction of the chair and to assist in practical details of organizing meetings. Other duties may include the greeting of visitors or providing security. The Serjeant-at-Arms may be in charge of the organization's property. In large organizations, the Serjeant-at-Arms may have assistants. A law enforcement officer may serve in the role of Serjeant-at-Arms, or it may be a paid, permanent position in the organization.